This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
It's the Larry Kudlow Show. Free market prosperity starts here. Now, here's Larry Kudlow.
Welcome back, folks. So, Mr. Trump has once again shown us how to use tariffs as a negotiating tool or a negotiating weapon. In this most recent case with Mexico and Canada, it's more about immigration and closing the border than it is about altering tariffs. North America is a free trade zone because of USMCA. So we're going to bring in John Carney, Breitbart economics editor and co-author of the fabulous Breitbart Business Digest, which is a must-read every day. John, welcome back. It's very interesting. The ink was barely dry on the critical editorial written by our friends, and they are our friends at the Wall Street Journal editorial board, when it seemed like Trump's 25% tariff threat moved President Sheinbaum of Mexico back into his column, where she said she would cooperate and close the border. Now, we don't necessarily know all the details. And on top of that, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau immediately got on a plane and flew to Mar-a-Lago to tell Mr. Trump that how much he would cooperate with closing the border. And this is one of those cases where the threat of a tariff will not yield the tariff. The threat of a tariff will yield some good political goal. John, you there?
Yes, sorry, that's exactly right, Larry.
Oh.
You got it exactly right. Where we had a lot of people were caught off guard when Trump 2 months before the inauguration starts announcing that there will be tariffs. But you and I, and those of us who are following this closely, expected exactly this, and we expected this reaction, that he would say, okay, the baseline is going to be a large tariff. Come to me. Here's what I want. I want help on the border. I want help on fentanyl. I want help on migration. I want help on keeping China's influence out of Mexican factories. And of course, initially people said, "Oh no, they're not going to. Why would anybody cooperate with him?" But of course, they're going to. We have a huge economy. Mexico is completely dependent on the U.S. for its economic growth. So they came and they are making peace. We are probably going to end up with no or very small additional tariffs on Mexico or Canada at all, because they are going to come around and get the things done. And frankly, it's not even that big of an ask. Trump is really asking for Mexico to just go back to the pre-Biden rules. And they
right.
know they can do that. They already did it once.
The Remain in Mexico rules. That's exactly right. I'm not surprised. I mean, I actually spoke to Justin Trudeau last week or 10 days ago, and he is more than happy to help on this with the northern border. But the southern border, which is where the real catastrophe has been, at first Sheinbaum sounded, somewhat hostile. Then it changed. I don't know that we know everything there is to know about that conversation between Trump and Sheinbaum. I think the test here, John, is going to be, will she restore, I guess it was about 25,000 troops that President AMLO had put on several years ago, pre-Biden, which really did. Go ahead.
I think they will do it because, so she has, remember, two audiences when she is speaking. One is her domestic political audience. And Mexico, if you are a leader of Mexico, you cannot be seen to just roll over when the United States tells you what to do. It is a proud country with its own history. So the leader of Mexico has to at least talk tough when the leader of the United States talks tough to Mexico. But behind the scenes, they actually there's nothing we don't actually have a clash of interests here. Mexico also does not want all of these people coming into its country from all over the world just in the hopes of getting to the U.S. It strengthens the gangs, which are a big problem with Mexico. It weakens its own borders and law and order. So their interest is actually aligned with the U.S. when it comes to sending a message. Remember, because this isn't a problem of Mexicans coming into the U.S. primarily. This massive border problem we have had is people coming from all over the world and coming through Mexico into the U.S. The Mexicans don't want that any more than we do, so they will be willing to help on this.
But on your generic piece about tariffs, GOP returns to its roots as the party of tariffs. You've got, let's see, new polling from Echelon Insights finds that 71% of Republicans say they support Trump tariff proposals. That's quite a change, I think, John.
It is. One of the things that's happened is, look, for a long time, the Republican Party in particular was very much opposed to tariffs, and they had become, I hesitate to call them a free trade party, because it wasn't really a free trade party. It was a party in which the policies we were adopting were essentially the industrial policies of China or the industrial policies of Germany that we had no choice but to put up with because we weren't willing to do anything about. I think, and I've said this before, and I think you agree with me on this, Larry, that actually the path to a real free trade regime around the world begins with the U.S. putting on tariffs in order to reestablish a balance. The world trade had become very badly unbalanced. We can restore the balance, but it's going to take real action from the U.S. to do that.
Well, that's what President Trump, I think, wants. It's essentially a policy of reciprocity, but he's willing to punish unfair trading practices. The world trading system has basically collapsed. And, you know, theoretically, a lot of economists talk about Ricardian equivalence theory and free trade, but there is no equivalence between the economies of China and the U.S. economy. And actually, increasingly, there's no equivalence between the EU economy, which has gone socialist, and the U.S., which, despite the socialism of the Biden administration, is still going to be a free trade, a free market country with free market incentives under Mr. Trump. So I think that's exactly right. John, don't want to lose you before we talk about inflation is making a fool of the Fed. The latest inflation numbers on the so-called core PCE and others, it's a sticky inflation problem. And although prices are slowed, the fact is they're still going up. And the fact is the 20% price gain will continue to damage working classes, middle-income folks, middle American folks, kitchen table folks. And the Fed really, I hate to see him keep pushing money into the economy by lowering interest rates.
It's a big mistake. I think we are going to get up above 3% on the core PCE by the end of the year, which I think will signal that the Fed made an epic mistake when they started cutting too early. The problem is when you start to cut too early, then people project out where, you know, all the cuts that will come in the future, and that tends to actually, you know, animate the animal spirits again. The problem then becomes you are stuck on a path of cutting. The Fed probably is going to end up cutting again in December, which will be its third mistake. But this is one of the things that happens in monetary policy, and we've seen it happen in history, which is once the Fed sets itself on a path, it becomes very hard to back off of that path without it declaring that it had made a mistake. And they hate to do that because they are convinced that if anybody ever doubts that the Fed gets everything right, that the global economy will instantly crumble. So they won't admit their mistake. They're probably going to cut in December. That'll be the third mistake in a row. I think they'll go on a long pause. I think some Republicans might say, oh, no, that's not good. But frankly, I think it's actually good if the Fed pauses, doesn't allow. The worst thing that could happen to President Trump would be for the Fed to reignite inflation while he is
in his
president.
First year. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. All right, we'll leave it there. John Carney, folks, you got to read Breitbart Business Digest is put out daily. John is the co-author of that. It is a must-read. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk some more about the Fed and the economy with my dear friend Judy Shelton. We got to have some Federal Reserve reforms. That is absolutely crucial. I'm Kudlow. We will be right back.
This is the Larry Kudlow Show.